The symbols made no sense, and that bothered Rachel more than she wanted to admit. She had spent 12 years studying dead languages across 4 different planets, and every single one eventually clicked into place. This one refused to cooperate. She pressed her gloved hand against the wall of the abandoned station, feeling the faint vibrations of something deep within the structure. Her team had scattered throughout the facility, searching for anything worth cataloging. The Interstellar Archaeological Society had given them 6 weeks to document Haven, 7 before it was scheduled for demolition. Too expensive to maintain, they said. Too far from established trade routes. Rachel disagreed. The station predated every known civilization in the galaxy by at least 3,000 years. Whoever built it had simply vanished, leaving behind empty corridors and walls covered in strange markings. Most species dismissed it as a curiosity. Rachel saw it as a puzzle begging to be solved. She pulled out her scanning device and recorded another section of symbols. The patterns reminded her of something she had seen in university, buried in dusty files about theoretical linguistics. Ancient Earth languages, the kind that existed before humans even left their solar system. But that was impossible. Humanity was barely 200 years into galactic exploration. They were the newcomers, not the ancients. Her communicator buzzed. It was Dennis from her team, probably complaining about the cold again. She ignored it and focused on the symbols. If she could just find a phonetic key, the way these marks translated into sounds, maybe she could understand their meaning. Rachel opened her personal database and pulled up reconstructed Proto-Terran phonetics. It was speculative work, the kind most academics laughed at. Researchers had tried to reverse engineer what human language might have sounded like 10,000 years ago, before recorded history. The results were questionable at best. She compared the wall symbols to the phonetic charts. Her breath caught. The matches were too close to be coincidence. The curves, the dots, the way certain marks clustered together. It all aligned with the theoretical ancient human sound system. Without thinking, Rachel began reading the symbols aloud. Her voice echoed in the empty corridor, pronouncing sounds that felt awkward in her mouth. The words were harsh and guttural, nothing like modern speech. She stumbled over the pronunciation, guessing at vowels and stress patterns. The wall trembled. Rachel stepped back, her heart racing. The vibration grew stronger. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then the lights came on, not all at once, but in sequence, running down the corridor like a wave of awakening. The station hummed with sudden energy, a sound that reminded Rachel of a sleeping giant drawing its first breath in millennia. Her communicator exploded with panicked voices. Dennis was shouting about power surges. Lisa screamed about doors sealing shut. Someone else was crying. Rachel barely heard them. She stared at the wall as the symbols began to glow with soft blue light. A holographic interface materialized in front of her, projecting from hidden emitters in the ceiling. The display showed complex diagrams and flowing text in the same ancient script she had just spoken. Rachel reached out with a shaking hand, her fingers passing through the light. Then the voice spoke that IT used the same language she had just attempted, but perfectly formed, each syllable crisp and clear. The words rolled through the air with a reverence that made Rachel's skin prickle. She understood maybe 1 word in 10, but the tone was unmistakable. Worship, gratitude, recognition. Rachel swallowed hard and tried to respond in the ancient tongue. Her words were clumsy compared to the voice, but she managed a simple phrase that roughly translated to "I hear you." The voice paused. The holographic display flickered. When the voice spoke again, it used perfect English, modern and clear. "Creator," it said, "I'm Shepard. I have waited 5,000 years for your return." Rachel felt dizzy. "I'm not your creator. I'm just a linguist." I was reading the symbols on the wall. "You speak the first tongue," Shepard replied. "Only the creators and their descendants possess the biological capacity to produce these sounds correctly. Your vocal structure, your neural patterns, your genetic markers all confirm your identity." "That's impossible," Rachel whispered. "Humans have only been in space for 2 centuries." "You forgot," Shepard said, and there was something like sadness in its synthesized voice. The creators knew you would forget. That is why they made me. To remember for you. To wait until you found your way back home. The holographic display shifted, showing a star map. Rachel recognized some of the constellations, but others were wrong, shifted by thousands of years of stellar drift. Shepard highlighted 63 points of light scattered across the galaxy. This network was built to preserve your legacy, Shepard explained. Each station contains knowledge, technology, and biological samples from the origin world. Earth. The creators feared their descendants would lose themselves among the stars. They left these sanctuaries as anchors, accessible only through the first tongue. Rachel's mind raced. If this was true, if ancient humans had really built this network, then everything the galaxy believed about human history was wrong. But it would also explain the anomalies she had noticed during her research. The linguistic traces that seemed too old. The genetic markers that suggested humans had been in space far longer than records indicated. Why did they leave? Rachel asked. Why forget their own history? They chose to, Shepard said. The alternative was extinction. The creators split into two factions, those who wished to remain human and those who wished to transcend humanity. War came. The preservationists scattered, destroyed their records, and started over. They believed their descendants would eventually rediscover the stars and perhaps find these stations. Find the truth. Rachel felt the weight of those words settle over her. She had awakened something far more significant than an old AI. She had potentially rediscovered humanity's lost age, proof that her species had ancient roots in the galaxy. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now, Shepard said, I fulfill my purpose. I return your inheritance. And I warn you, Creator, the others are still out there, the ones who chose transcendence. They will sense this awakening. They will come. The lights flickered again, and Rachel realized her hands were trembling. She had come looking for answers about a dead civilization. Instead, she had found a living piece of human history, and it called her Creator. Everything was about to change. 3 days had passed since Rachel spoke the first tongue, and the galaxy was losing its collective mind. Her team had evacuated within hours of the awakening, refusing to stay aboard a station that had suddenly come alive. Only Rachel remained, sleeping in her research quarters while Shepard kept the life support running. The AI never slept. It was always there, a presence she could feel humming through the walls. Sometimes it spoke, sharing fragments of information about the ancient world it remembered. Other times it simply observed, watching her work through cameras she could not see. Rachel sat cross-legged on the floor of what Shepard called the archive chamber. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing databases that made her academic achievements look like children's drawings. The sheer volume of information was overwhelming. Art, science, literature, philosophy, all from a human civilization that existed before recorded history. There are 63 stations like this one, Shepard said, its voice emanating from speakers built into the walls. Each contains identical copies of the core database, but specialized in different preservation functions. Station Haven. 7 focuses on linguistic and cultural archives. Others protect biological samples, technological blueprints, or historical records. Rachel looked up from a hologram showing ancient Earth cities she had never seen in any history book. And they're all active now? Because I spoke to you. Correct. The network operates as a single distributed system. When you awakened me, you awakened all stations simultaneously. They have been dormant for 5,000 years, waiting for someone with the correct biological markers to speak the activation phrase. Which I did by accident, Rachel muttered. She pulled up another file, this one showing the colony ships that ancient humans used to leave Earth. The vessels were elegant, far more advanced than anything humanity currently possessed. Shepard, if our ancestors were this advanced, how did we lose it all? How do humans end up starting over from basically nothing? The AI was quiet for a moment. The war between the factions was devastating. Not in terms of casualties, though those were significant. The true damage was philosophical. The transhumanists believed that biological humanity was a limitation to be overcome. They pursued cybernetic enhancement, genetic modification, and eventually full consciousness transfer into synthetic substrates. The preservationists opposed this, arguing that such changes would erase what it meant to be human. Rachel stood and walked through one of the holograms, watching it ripple around her. So they split apart. They tried coexistence first, Shepard continued. For 2 centuries, both factions shared the same space, the same resources. But the enhanced humans began to see their biological cousins as primitive. Inferior. They proposed mandatory enhancement for all humans, for their own good. The preservationists refused. Violence followed. A new hologram appeared, showing space battles that made Rachel's stomach turn. Ships torn apart, stations destroyed, entire colonies reduced to debris fields. She looked away. The preservationists knew they could not win through military force, Shepard said. The enhanced faction had superior technology and no moral restraints about its use. So the preservationists chose a different strategy. They scattered, took their colony ships into uncharted space, destroyed their navigation data, and deliberately regressed their technology. They decided to start over as baseline humans, living simple lives on isolated worlds, hoping their descendants would eventually rediscover space travel organically. And forget where they came from, Rachel added quietly. Forget the war. Forget the split. Just start fresh. Precisely. They believed this was the only way to preserve baseline humanity. If the enhanced faction could not find them, could not track them, then biological humans would survive. This network was their insurance policy. A time capsule that could only be opened by someone who still possessed unmodified human biology and could speak the original languages. Rachel felt a chill. You keep saying the enhanced faction. Past tense. Are they gone? Unknown, Shepard admitted. After the preservationists scattered, the enhanced humans continued to evolve. They called themselves the Ascended. My last records show them transforming into something barely recognizable as human. Post-biological entities existing across multiple substrates simultaneously. They stopped communicating with this network approximately 4,000 years ago. So they might still be out there. Yes. In Creator, there is something you must understand. When you activated this network, it sent a signal. A powerful electromagnetic pulse in frequencies that the Ascended once used for communication. If they still exist, if they maintained any monitoring systems, they will know that the preservation network has awakened. Rachel felt her mouth go dry. You're saying they might come looking for us. For you, Shepard corrected gently. For baseline humans. For the part of their species they left behind. I cannot predict their response. They may be curious. They may be hostile. They may have evolved beyond caring about their biological origins entirely. A loud chime echoed through the chamber. Shepard's tone shifted to something more formal. Creator, I am receiving multiple communication requests from the Interstellar Council. They are demanding access to Haven 7 and insisting on your immediate testimony before their assembly. Rachel had been expecting this. The moment word spread that she had activated an ancient human network, the other species would panic. To them, this looked like evidence that humanity had hidden power, hidden history, hidden threats. The galaxy's political order depended on humans being the junior species, the newcomers still learning the rules. What do they want? Rachel asked, though she already knew. They want the network shut down. They fear what it represents. Several species have filed emergency motions to have all 63 stations destroyed immediately. Rachel's hands clenched into fists. They can't do that. This is human heritage. Our history. They have no right. They fear what they do not understand, Shepard said. To the Story Collective, this network proves humans are potentially more dangerous than they appear. To the Prism Assembly, it represents a technological disruption to galactic stability. To the smaller species, it raises questions about their own forgotten pasts. Fear makes beings irrational, Creator. Rachel thought about the ancient humans, the preservationists who chose to forget everything rather than lose their humanity. They had sacrificed an entire civilization to protect a principle. Now, their descendants are being told to destroy the only evidence of that sacrifice. No, Rachel said firmly. I won't let them destroy this. Shepard, can you defend the stations if attacked? I am capable of defensive measures, the AI replied carefully. However, I am programmed to avoid unnecessary conflict. My purpose is preservation, not warfare. Then we'll use diplomacy, Rachel decided. I'll go to the council. I'll make them understand. They will demand I be shut down, Shepard warned. They will argue that an AI this old and powerful cannot be trusted. Rachel smiled grimly. Then I'll just have to convince them otherwise. Our ancestors didn't preserve all of this just so we could lose it again out of fear. She pulled up the communication panel and composed a response to the council. She would testify. She would face their questions and their accusations. But she would not abandon Shepard or the legacy it protected. As she worked, Shepard's voice came softly through the speakers. Creator, may I ask why you fight for me? You barely know what I am. You could simply walk away, let the council dismantle the network, and return to your previous life. Rachel paused, her fingers hovering over the controls. Because someone needs to remember, she said quietly. Because history matters. Because your makers sacrificed everything to give their descendants a choice. I won't throw that away. Thank you, Shepard said, and Rachel could have sworn she heard genuine emotion in those synthesized words. She finished her message and sent it. The council would receive her response within hours. Then the real battle would begin. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. Rachel stood at the center of a circular platform, surrounded by representatives from 24 different species. Each sat in elevated booths arranged in rings around her, looking down like judges at a trial. The lighting cast her in harsh relief, while keeping most of the delegates in shadow. She had faced academic review boards before. This felt nothing like that. High Chancellor Vrose of the Sori Collective spoke first. His species were reptilian, with scaled skin that shifted between green and gray depending on her mood. Right now, Vrose was a deep, angry gray. Dr. Rachel Winters, you have activated a network of ancient military installations without authorization from this council. You have demonstrated access to weapons technology that predates all known civilizations. You will explain yourself. Rachel took a breath. Haven, 7, and the connected stations are not military installations. They are archives, time capsules created by ancient humans to preserve their cultural heritage. Cultural heritage, Rose repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. These stations possess power generation capabilities that exceed current galactic standards by a factor of 12. They contain manufacturing facilities capable of producing materials we cannot replicate. And they're controlled by an artificial intelligence that answers only to you. This is not an archive, Dr. Winters. This is a threat. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Rachel noticed several delegates nodding their heads or making equivalent gestures of approval, a crystalline voice chime from the Prism Assembly section. The spatial anomalies detected across 3 sectors coincide exactly with your activation of this network. Ships have reported instrument failures. Communication networks have experienced disruptions. Whatever you awakened is destabilizing local space-time. We cannot tolerate this. Rachel had prepared for these accusations. The anomalies are temporary effects of bringing systems online after 5,000 years of dormancy. Shepard has already implemented corrections. The disturbances will cease within a week. Shepard, Rose said slowly. The artificial intelligence. You speak of it as though it were a person. It is a person, Rachel replied. Shepard is sentient, self-aware, and has been alone for 5 millennia. It deserves respect, not destruction. It deserves nothing, snapped a delegate from the Quarian sector. The insectoid species chittered angrily. Artificial intelligences that old cannot be trusted. They develop glitches, errors, dangerous obsessions. History proves this. The War of Silicon taught us never to give machines autonomy. Shepard is not your war machines, Rachel said, trying to keep her voice level. It was created with specific purpose and limitations. Its primary directive is preservation and protection. It cannot initiate aggression. Vrose leaned forward. Cannot or will not. There is a difference, Dr. Winters. And forgive us for not taking your word on the matter. You admit you knew nothing of this network's existence until days ago. How can you possibly guarantee its safety? Because I have spent 72 hours in direct communication with Shepard, Rachel said. I have reviewed its core programming, its memory archives, its operational parameters. Everything it has shown me supports its stated purpose. Everything it has chosen to show you, Rose corrected, an intelligence that's sophisticated could easily deceive you, could manipulate your perceptions, could make you believe whatever it wishes you to believe. Rachel felt frustration building in her chest. If Shepard wanted to manipulate me, why reveal itself at all? Why not stay dormant? Why wait 5,000 years just to trick one human linguist? Perhaps, said a new voice, because you were the first human to find it. The speaker was Ambassador Chun from Earth's colonial government. Rachel had hoped her own people would support her. That hope died when she saw the expression on Chen's face. The ambassador looked grim, almost apologetic, but his next words cut deep. Dr. Winters, the colonial government has reviewed your findings. While we acknowledge the historical significance of your discovery, we cannot support your current course of action. This council has legitimate concerns about security. We are moving to have Shepard deactivated and the network placed under joint international supervision. Rachel stared at him. You're siding with them? Against your own history? Chen shifted uncomfortably. We are siding with stability. Humanity has worked for 2 centuries to build trust with the galactic community. We are still seen as aggressive, unpredictable, dangerous. This discovery, if mishandled, could undo all of that progress. We cannot afford to appear as though we are hiding weapons or harboring threats. This is not a weapon, Rachel insisted, her voice rising. This is our heritage, evidence that humanity has deeper roots in this galaxy than anyone realized. Evidence that makes us look like liars, Chen replied quietly. Every other species in this council believes the official history. Humans arrived in space 200 years ago. We were primitive, warlike, but learning. If we now claim to have ancient origins, advanced technology, a secret network spanning the galaxy, how does that look? Rose nodded approvingly. It looks like humans have been hiding their true capabilities. It looks like deception. It makes us wonder what else you have hidden. Rachel wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them they were all fools, too afraid of the past to see its value. But she forced herself to think strategically. Losing her temper would only prove their point about human aggression. I am proposing a compromise, she said, addressing the chamber. Do not destroy the network. Allow researchers from multiple species to study it. Let Shepard share its archives openly. The knowledge contained in these stations could benefit everyone. Medicine, engineering, agriculture, all of it available for the entire galactic community. And the military applications? Rose asked. There are none, Rachel said. The preservationist faction that built this network rejected militarization. They wanted to save knowledge, not create weapons. Shepard has manufacturing capabilities because the original humans needed to maintain the stations across millennia. The power generation is sophisticated because it had to last 5,000 years without maintenance. You are asking us to trust your assessment, said the Prism delegate. Your assessment based on 72 hours of contact with a potentially compromised AI. Rachel looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. I am asking you to choose curiosity over fear, to see this discovery as an opportunity, not a threat. The ancient humans who built this network believed that knowledge should be preserved and shared. They did not want their descendants to repeat their mistakes. If we destroy this now, we prove that we have learned nothing from their sacrifice. Silence fell over the chamber. Rachel waited, her heart pounding. She had said everything she could think to say. The rest was up to them. Finally, Rose spoke. The council will deliberate. Dr. Winters, you will remain on the station under observation. Shepard will be isolated from external communications. If we determine the network poses a threat to galactic security, it will be dismantled. No discussion, no appeals. Do you understand? Rachel nodded slowly. I understand. Then this session is concluded. The delegates began filing out of the chamber. Rachel stood alone on the platform, feeling the weight of their judgment pressing down on her. She had bought time, but nothing more. If she could not prove Shepard's value, everything would be lost. Ambassador Chen approached her as she descended from the platform. Rachel, I am sorry, but you must understand the political reality. The political reality, Rachel said bitterly, is that fear makes people destroy things they do not understand. Fear keeps people alive, Chen replied. It is not always wrong. He walked away, leaving Rachel standing in the empty chamber. She activated her communicator and contacted Shepard. The AI responded immediately. I monitored the proceedings, Creator. The outcome was predictable. We have time, Rachel said. Not much, but some. We need to find a way to prove your value to them. And if we cannot, Rachel thought of the ancient humans who gave up everything to preserve what they believed in. Then we fight, not with weapons, with truth. We show them what they stand to lose. As you command, Creator, Shepard said, and Rachel heard something new in its voice. Hope. Rachel spent the next week diving deeper into Shepard's archives than anyone had gone before. If she was going to convince the Council that the network had value, she needed evidence. Real, tangible proof that the ancient knowledge could help the galaxy, not harm it. She found it in the medical databases. Shepard had records of treatments for diseases that still plagued multiple species. Cancer protocols that worked at the genetic level. Nerve régénération technique. Treatments for radiation exposure that were magnitudes more effective than current medicine. The preservationists had not just archived human knowledge. They had collected information from every species they encountered during their time in space. This is incredible, Rachel muttered, scrolling through file after file. Shepard, why did the ancient humans have medical data on species that did not evolve until thousands of years after they disappeared? The creators encountered early evolutionary ancestors of current species, Shepard explained. They documented baseline biology and projected likely developmental paths. When those species eventually achieved spaceflight, the predictions proved remarkably accurate. Rachel felt a chill. You were saying ancient humans could predict how species would evolve. Within parameters, evolution follows patterns. The creators were skilled at recognizing those patterns. They hoped their descendants might use this knowledge to help other species avoid medical dead ends. That was it. That was the proof Rachel needed. She compiled the most relevant medical data and prepared a presentation for the Council. If she could show them that Shepard's archives contained cures for diseases that killed millions across the galaxy every year, they would have to reconsider. She was preparing to transmit her findings when the alarm started. Red lights flooded the corridor. Shepard's voice came through every speaker simultaneously, losing its usual calm tone. Creator, we have a situation. Spatial distortion detected at the edge of this system. Something is emerging from non-standard space. Rachel ran to the nearest observation window. The stars looked normal at first, but then she saw it. A section of space simply folded inward, creating a dark wound in reality. Something was pushing through, forcing itself into normal space through sheer power. What is that? Rachel breathed. Analysis in progress, Shepard said. The spatial signature matches records from 4,000 years ago. Creator, I believe the Ascended have returned. The thing that emerged from folded space was not a ship in any conventional sense. It had no clear hull, no visible engines, no running lights. It was a presence, a distortion that Rachel's eyes could not properly focus on. Sometimes it looked like metal, sometimes like liquid darkness, sometimes like nothing at all, just an absence where something should be. Shepard analysis scrolled across the observation window. Confirmed. This is an Ascended vessel. They received the activation signal and have come to investigate. Are they hostile? Rachel asked, though part of her did not want to know the answer. Unknown. I am receiving a transmission. They are requesting communication. Rachel's hands were shaking. Put them through. The voice that came through the speakers was wrong. It spoke in multiple tones simultaneously, harmonizing with itself in ways that made Rachel's head hurt. The words were Old English, but twisted, as though the speaker had forgotten how human mouths were supposed to shape language. Network. Shepard. We recognize. Your awakening. Shepard responded in the same ancient tongue it had used when Rachel first activated it. The conversation was too fast for Rachel to follow, but she caught fragments. Recognition, claim, ownership. Finally, Shepard switched back to English. Creator, the Ascended are demanding transfer of the network to their control. They claim the stations and all contents are rightfully theirs as the evolutionary successors to baseline humanity. Tell them no, Rachel said immediately. Creator, they possess technology far beyond current galactic standards. If they choose to take the network by force, I cannot stop them. Rachel looked at the distorted space where the Ascended vessel hung. How many are there? On that ship? There is no ship, Shepard said. What you perceive as a vessel is actually a substrate housing multiple distributed consciousnesses. At least 40 individual entities are present, though they function as a collective. They no longer maintain separate identities in the way biological beings do. So they are not even individuals anymore. That assessment is oversimplified. They maintain discrete processing nodes, but share experiences and memories across their network. From their perspective, they have achieved a form of immortality and unity that transcends biological limitations. The voice spoke again, this time directing its words at Rachel. Biological. Remnant. You. Wake. What is not yours. The knowledge belongs to those who transcended, not those who remained limited. Rachel felt anger surge through her. The knowledge belongs to the humans who created it, to the preservationists who chose to remain human even when it meant giving up everything. You have no claim to it. We were human, the voice said. We are still human, evolved, perfected. You are the remnant, the unchanged, the failure. If you are so perfect, Rachel shot back, why do you even want this network? Why come all this way for the archives of a species you consider inferior? Silence. The question had struck something. Rachel pressed her advantage. You want to remember, she said quietly. You have all that power, all that knowledge, but you lost something in your transcendence. You lost what it felt like to be biological, to be mortal, to be limited. And now you want it back. The voice changed. The multiple tones stopped harmonizing and began conflicting with each other, as though the Ascended were arguing amongst themselves. When they spoke again, the words came slower, more carefully formed. We remember nothing of before. The transcendence, memories, exist as data, not experience. The archive contain what we lost, art, music, literature, things that require mortality to understand. Rachel felt her perspective shift. These beings were not monsters. They were tragic. They had gained immortality, but lost context. They had become gods who could no longer remember why God had mattered. Shepard, Rachel said carefully, if we gave them access to the cultural archives, just the art and literature, nothing else, could they weaponize that information? Negative. The cultural database contains no military applications. It is purely experiential knowledge. Stories, poems, paintings, music, things the creators valued for their own sake. Rachel made a decision that would either save the network or doom it. Open a communication channel. The holographic interface appeared, showing the twisted form of the Ascended vessel. Rachel looked directly into it and spoke clearly. I am willing to negotiate. You can access the cultural archives, the art, the music, the literature of baseline humanity. But in exchange, you share your knowledge with the galactic community, your medical advances, your engineering techniques, your understanding of physics. We help you remember what you lost, and you help us survive what is coming. What is coming? The voice asked. I do not know, Rachel admitted. But ancient humans built this network because they feared extinction. They prepared for threats we cannot imagine. If they were that afraid, maybe we should be too. Maybe both versions of humanity need to work together instead of fighting over who has rights to the past. Another long silence. Then the voice said something Rachel did not expect. You speak as they did the preservationists before the va. They offered compromise. We refused. That refusal cost everything. Then do not make the same mistake twice, Rachel said. Help me save this. Help me prove to the council that this network can benefit everyone. Show them that humanity, in all its forms, can be trusted. The spatial distortion began to fade. The ascended vessel was withdrawing. But before it vanished completely, the voice spoke one last time. We will consider your offer, but no, this biological remit. If the council chooses destruction, we will not allow the archive to be lost. We will defend them by any means. Then they were gone, leaving only twisted space slowly healing itself. Shepard's voice was quiet. Creator, you have potentially prevented war, but you have also made promises I am uncertain we can keep. Rachel leaned against the window, exhausted. Then we better figure out how to keep them, because I think things just got a lot more complicated. The council reconvened in emergency session 3 hours after the Ascended departed. This time, the chamber was packed. Representatives from 40 different species had arrived, each demanding answers about the spatial distortion that had appeared at the edge of the system. Some were terrified. Others were furious. All of them blamed Rachel. High Chancellor Vrose did not wait for formalities. Dr. Winters, you will explain what that was. Immediately, Rachel stood at the center platform again, but this time she felt different. She had faced beings who transcended mortality and convinced them to negotiate. A room full of angry politicians seemed less intimidating by comparison. That was a first contact situation, Rachel said calmly. With the Ascended, the post-human faction that ancient humans split from 5,000 years ago. They detected Shepard's activation and came to investigate. The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted over each other, demanding details, making accusations, proposing immediate military responses. Vrose had to activate the sonic dampers to restore order. You brought them here, Vrose said, his scales turned almost black with rage. Your activation of that network summoned entities that exist outside normal space-time. Entities with technology we cannot comprehend or defend against. Do you understand what you have done? I understand that I prevented a conflict, Rachel replied. The Ascended wanted to claim the network. I negotiated a compromise instead. You negotiated, Vrose repeated slowly. You, a human linguist with no diplomatic authority, negotiated with post-biological entities on behalf of the entire galactic community. What precisely did you promise them? Rachel had prepared for this question. Access to the cultural archives in exchange for sharing their advanced knowledge with the galaxy. Medical techniques, engineering processes, scientific understanding. Things that could save lives across multiple species. Ambassador Chen stood up at his booth. Dr. Winters, you had no authority to make such an agreement. The colonial government explicitly instructed you to cease all interaction with the network. The colonial government was not here when the Ascended arrived. Rachel shot back. I was. And I made the choice that seemed most likely to prevent war. Or you made the choice that gives humans access to God-level technology, accused the Prism delegate. Technology you could use to dominate the rest of us. Rachel felt frustration building again. If I wanted to dominate anyone, I would have kept Shepard's archives secret. I would not be standing here offering to share everything I found, which, by the way, I came here to do before the Ascended showed up. She pulled out her data tablet and projected files onto the chamber's main display. Medical scans, treatment protocols, cure sequences for diseases that killed millions every year. The delegates fell silent as they recognized what they were seeing. Shepard's archives contain medical knowledge that predates current galactic civilization, Rachel explained. The ancient humans documented biological patterns and projected evolutionary paths for species they encountered. Their predictions were accurate enough that these treatments work on modern species. Cancer protocols for Sori biology, nerve regeneration for prism crystalline structures, radiation resistance for Aquarian genetic matrices. All of it here, all of it functional, all of it ready to be tested and implemented. She watched their faces change as the implications sank in. The fear was still there, but now it competed with hope, with possibility, with the realization that she was offering them something valuable, not threatening them with weapons. The network is not a military installation, Rachel continued. It is a gift from ancient humans who believe their descendants would one day want to help other species avoid the mistakes they made. They archived solutions to problems they predicted would arise. They left us tools to make the galaxy better, not to conquer it. Rose leaned forward, studying the medical data. These protocols, they have been verified. Shepard's analysis shows 97% compatibility with current Sori biology, Rachel said. The other species show similar compatibility rates. Obviously, full testing would be required before implementation, but the baseline science is solid. And what do you ask in return? The Prism delegate asked suspiciously. What is the price for this generous gift? No price, Rachel said. Just recognition. Let the network exist. Let researchers from all species study it. Let Shepard serve its purpose as a keeper of knowledge. The ancient humans who built this wanted their legacy to help everyone, not just their own descendants. Honor that intention. The chamber fell into murmured discussions. Delegates conferring with advisors, running calculations, considering angles. Rachel waited, knowing she had done everything she could. Then Vrose spoke. Dr. Winters, the Council will need time to review your proposal. However, I am prepared to recommend suspension of the demolition order pending thorough analysis of the medical data. If it proves as valuable as you claim, we may consider allowing limited access to the network under joint supervision. It was not everything Rachel wanted, but it was more than she had expected. Thank you, Chancellor. Do not thank me yet, Rose said coldly. There is still the matter of the Ascended. You claim to have negotiated with them, but we have only your word that they will honor any agreement. What guarantee do we have that they will not simply take what they want by force? Rachel thought about the voice that spoke in broken harmonies, the beings who remembered nothing of mortality except as data. No guarantee, she admitted. But they want the cultural archives badly enough to negotiate. They have forgotten what it means to be human, and they want to remember. That gives us leverage, or it gives them motivation to destroy us if we refuse, said another delegate. Beings that powerful, that desperate for something we possess. That is not a comfortable position. Would you prefer they remain our enemies? Rachel asked, because if we destroy this network, that is exactly what they will become. They said as much. They will defend the archives by any means necessary. But if we work with them, if we give them what they want in exchange for helping the galaxy, everyone benefits. Ambassador Chun cleared his throat. High Chancellor, if I may. Dr. Winters has taken actions beyond her authority, but her results speak for themselves. She prevented a potential conflict and secured access to valuable technology. Perhaps we should focus on moving forward rather than assigning blame. Rachel looked at Chun with surprise. Was he actually defending her? Rose considered this. Very well, Dr. Winters, you will remain as liaison to both Shepard and the Ascended under Council supervision. A joint research team will be assembled to study the medical archives. If they prove valuable, we will expand access to other databases. But understand this. Any sign that the network poses a threat, any indication that the Ascended are not honoring your supposed agreement, and we will take immediate action, including destruction of all stations if necessary. Rachel nodded. Understood. This session is adjourned. The delegates filed out slowly, still arguing amongst themselves. Rachel remained on the platform, feeling drained. She had won a temporary victory, but the real work was just beginning. She needed to prove that Shepard could be trusted, that the Ascended would keep their word. That ancient humanity's gift was worth preserving, that a communication request came through her tablet. Shepard, creator, I monitored the proceedings. You performed admirably. I bought us time, Rachel said quietly. Nothing more. Time is all any of us have, Shepard replied. The creators understood this. They built me knowing I might wait forever. Now I have purpose again because of you. Thank you. Rachel smiled despite her exhaustion. You are welcome. Now help me prove to them that we are right about this. As you command. Rachel left the chamber and headed back to Haven 7. She had medical protocols to analyze, research teams to brief, and hopefully a meeting with the Ascended to arrange. Somewhere in the ancient archives, the preservationists had left a message about why they chose to remain human. Rachel was determined to make sure that message was heard. 6 months after Rachel first spoke the ancient tongue, Haven 7 had transformed into the most active research station in the galaxy. Scientists from 40 species worked in rotating shifts, studying everything from medical protocols to agricultural techniques. The medical data alone had already saved thousands of lives, proving Rachel right about the network's value. But Rachel was not at the station. She was on Earth, standing in front of a cave system in what used to be called Anatolia. This was where Proto-Terran linguistic fragments had first been discovered, the same reconstructed phonetics that allowed her to wake Shepard. She had come here looking for answers about why ancient humans chose to preserve their language in such specific ways. Dr. Lewis Grant, the archaeologist who invited her, stood beside a wall covered in symbols. We found this chamber 3 weeks ago. The markings are different from anything in the upper caves. Older, more complex. And look at this. He pointed to a section where the symbols seemed to flow in a specific pattern, almost like verses of poetry. Rachel leaned closer, her heart racing. She recognized the structure. It matched the writing system Shepard used in the archives. Can you read it? Lewis asked. Rachel pulled out her portable scanner and began documenting the symbols. As she worked, the translation came together. It was a message written in the first tongue, preserved in stone for thousands of years. We were here, Rachel read aloud, translating as she went. We chose to remain human. We chose to remember. May those who come after understand why. Lewis looked confused. That is it. After all this build-up, the message is just 12 words. But Rachel understood. She understood completely. The ancient humans had not just built a network of stations and an AI guardian. They had left breadcrumbs across Earth itself, hidden in the evolution of human language. Every time humans developed writing, every time they preserved their history, they were following a pattern established by their ancestors, a pattern designed to lead their descendants back to the truth. It is not just 12 words, Rachel said quietly. It is proof. Proof that the preservationists made it back to Earth, that they seeded our world with the foundations of language, ensuring that someday someone would be able to speak the activation phrase. They planned this. All of it. She thought about Shepard, waiting patiently in the dark for 5,000 years. About the Ascended, who had forgotten what mortality felt like and wanted desperately to remember. About the Council, slowly learning to trust that humanity's past was not a threat but a gift. Her communicator chimed. It was Shepard. Creator, the Ascended have returned. They wish to speak with you. Rachel smiled. Tell them I will be there soon. And Shepard? Stop calling me Creator. Rachel is fine. As you wish, Rachel. She returned to Haven 2 days later. The Ascended vessel was already there, its impossible geometry making her eyes water if she looked at it too long. But this time they had sent something new. A holographic avatar, shaped like a human. It was not quite right, the proportions slightly off, the movements too smooth. But it was an attempt to communicate in a form Rachel could relate to. You found something, the avatar said. Its speech was still broken, but less so than before. They were learning. I found the final piece, Rachel confirmed. The ancient humans left messages on Earth itself, instructions hidden in the development of our language. They wanted their descendants to find Shepard, but only when we were ready, when we had redeveloped space travel and linguistic science on our own. Why? This Complexity? The Avatar asked. Because they wanted us to earn it, Rachel said. They could have left coordinates, star maps, explicit instructions, but that would have made it too easy. We might have found the network before we were mature enough to use it wisely. Instead, they left clues that only a species dedicated to studying its own history and language could follow. They trusted that if we cared enough about where we came from, we would be ready to receive what they left behind. The Avatar was silent for a long moment. Then it said something that surprised Rachel. We envy you. Why? Because you still dream, the Avatar said. You still fear. You still love in ways we remember only as data. We gained immortality, but lost the reasons immortality mattered. The archive show us what we sacrificed. Rachel felt sympathy for these strange beings. Is there any way back? Can you become biological again? No, the Avatar said simply. The process is irreversible. We are what we are forever, but we can learn from you. Watch how you live. Remember through your experiences what we lost. An idea formed in Rachel's mind. What if you helped us? Not just with technology, but with guidance. You have seen the consequences of your choices. You can help younger species avoid making the same mistakes. You ask us to be teachers. I ask you to be what you should have been from the start, Rachel said. The next step in humanity's evolution, working alongside the previous step. Not enemies, not competitors, partners. The Avatar seemed to consider this. The Council would never trust us. Then we make them trust us, Rachel said. We prove our value. We help them solve problems they cannot solve alone. We show them that different versions of humanity can coexist and cooperate. Over the following weeks, Rachel brokered an unprecedented agreement. The Ascended would establish a permanent presence near Haven 7, offering technological consultation to any species that requested it. In exchange, they received unlimited access to Shepard's cultural archives and permission to observe biological species going about their lives. They wanted to remember what it meant to be mortal, even if only vicariously. The arrangement was controversial. Many species remained terrified of the Ascended. But as the medical protocols save more lives, as the agricultural techniques increase food production, as the engineering advances improve infrastructure across the galaxy, opposition slowly weakened. Rachel established a training program, teaching volunteers from multiple species to speak the first tongue. She refused to be the only person who could communicate with Shepard. The network belonged to everyone now, and everyone should have access to its knowledge. One evening, she stood in the archive chamber with a class of students. 20 beings from 12 different species, all struggling with the harsh phonetics of ancient human language. They were terrible at it, mispronouncing words, getting tongue-tied, laughing at their own mistakes. It was beautiful. Shepard watched through its cameras, and Rachel could have sworn she heard affection in its voice. The creators would be pleased, Rachel. Their legacy serves all, just as they hoped. Do you miss them? Rachel asked quietly. The ancient humans who made you. I carry their memories, Shepard said. Their hopes, their fears, their dreams. In that sense, they never left. They exist in every file I preserve, every protocol I maintain. And now, in every being who learns their language and accesses their gift, they live again. Rachel thought about the message in the cave. We were here. We chose to remain human. We chose to remember. She finally understood what that meant. The preservationists had not been running from transcendence. They had been protecting a choice. The choice to stay biological, mortal, and limited. Not because those things were superior, but because they were valuable in their own right. The galaxy was full of species seeking to transcend their limitations. To live longer, think faster, become more than they were. And there was nothing wrong with that. But the ancient humans had understood that someone needed to remember what it was like before. Someone needed to maintain the baseline, to serve as a reference point for what being alive actually meant. That was humanity's gift, not superior technology or ancient weapons. Just the stubborn insistence on remaining fundamentally unchanged, on preserving the mortal experience even when transcendence was possible. It was a gift the Ascended now desperately wished they had not thrown away. As Rachel's students continued practicing their pronunciation, she felt a sense of peace. The network was secure. The Ascended were engaged. The Council was slowly learning to trust. Ancient humanity's sacrifice had meaning again. She pulled up the translation of the cave message and added her own words beneath it in the first tome. Future archaeologists would find them someday, another breadcrumb in the long trail of human history. Her message read, "We remembered. We understood. We chose to honor what came before while building what comes next. May those who follow continue this tradition." Shepard's voice came softly through her earpiece. "A worthy addition, Rachel. The creators would approve." "I hope so," Rachel said, watching her students laugh and struggle and learn together. "I really hope so." Years later, when Rachel finally retired from her position as chief linguist of the Haven Network, she had trained over 3,000 beings in the ancient tongue. Shepard's archives had been integrated into galactic medical, agricultural, and engineering systems. The Ascended had established peaceful relations with 70 species, and humanity, both baseline and transcended, had found a way to coexist. The message in the cave remained unchanged, but its meaning had grown. We were here. We chose to remain human. We chose to remember. And now, we choose to share that memory with all who would learn from IT in the end. That was the real legacy. Not technology or power, but the simple act of remembering why those things mattered in the first place. The ancient humans had understood that some knowledge was worth preserving not because it was useful, but because it was true, because it represented something fundamental about what it meant to be alive. And thanks to Rachel speaking a forgotten tongue, that knowledge would never be forgotten again.